Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to UpStart Live. I'm Sakshi. I'm part of the brand and content team at PayU, and I'll be your host this evening. As you all know, PayU is one of the leading payment service providers catering businesses across sectors. We provide payment solutions to online and offline businesses with our cutting edge and award winning technology, and we hope that you grow together with us. As all of you who've joined me today, you all know that Upstart is an initiative by PayU where we conduct live sessions with subject matter experts and key opinion leaders to share their thoughts on topics which matter to you. So I'm very excited for today's topic, and let me just quickly get into it. It's one of the topics which we've been hearing this entire month of March, right? And I'm sure you all have already guessed looking at the panel here. Our today's topic is about embracing equity across business landscape. Before we get into this amazing insightful session, let me quickly introduce to the lovely panel sitting out here. I have with me Surbhi Talwar, CEO and co-founder of Happy Job Private Limited. Hi Surbhi. Again, it's great to connect with you once again after a very long time.
Thank you for having me.
Moving forward, I have another Surbi with me, Surbi Bhatia, founder and CEO of the Mom Store. I'm sure a brand all of you have heard. Hi Surbi, welcome to Upstart Live by PayU.
Thank you. Glad to be
Ah,
here.
yes, and I'm also joined with Raddhika Singh, managing partner of Aletheiaa Legal. Hi Raddhika, really looking forward to have you on board. A very different perspective, and you've been connected to PayU for a very long time. So thank you so much for again giving your time.
You're welcome, Sakshi. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and to everybody who's watching, right? Like I mentioned, the topic here, which is very important to not just this particular gender who's there in the panelists, but to everybody around us, right? But when we formed this panelist, we got people like you who belong to different spaces, have done tremendous in your individual journeys, but we know each one of you have identified certain challenges or certain opportunities which you would want to share to the users, right? And that is what we and I'm hoping everybody who's watching us look forward to. Just a little housekeeping before we get into the discussion. So everybody who's watching, please feel free to drop questions on the comment section. It could be generic to the panelist or addressed to an individual speaker. Please feel free to do that, and we'll pick it up at the end of the session. Okay, so let me just quickly begin. I'm very excited because when we laid down these certain specific set of questions, there are a lot of information I want to know from you guys, right? So keeping the entire topic in mind, right? Women, we've come a long way, right? But we still continue to face challenges when it comes to the business and the corporate world. Uh, Open to all of you. What are some of the not so obvious challenges which you guys have identified, or maybe came across your entire journey, which are not so obvious, not something which we've heard, but still really matters when you grow, in the business world? And how do you think you can tackle them, or how do you believe that women can tackle these challenges? Anyone could maybe take the floor.
I think I can start. So, women in their journey have different needs at different stages of their life, right? And when I started my career, I was probably performing like any male counterpart, where I could spend as many hours at work as possible, where I could, work through the weekends, be on call anytime I needed, and so on. But as I grew older and also into mid managerial and senior roles, I became a mom. And my entire landscape of how I could work completely changed. And I realized that, the needs of a woman during this phase changes a lot because she's handling more responsibility in her profession and career as well as in her household, and that's why majority of the women drop off during their 30s or during their motherhood journey because they're unable to cope up with the growing responsibilities on both the ends. So if companies are able to identify, what are the needs that happen during different stages of life, and this is not a constant stage. Once the child reaches an independent stage and woman is like has older children or teenagers, she's back probably performing like another male counterpart, as if I can say so. So keeping in mind what journey the woman is in her personal life impacts a lot on how she can contribute and the flexibility that she needs in her professional career.
No, to I mean, I don't know if I can relate to it, but because I'm not a mom, but I actually can relate to the fact that all of this kind of coincides and are parallel to each other. Radhika, do you have any thoughts on the same thing? What are some of the not so spoken challenges women face in the business world?
Yeah, see, some of the, I don't know if it's only for women. I think it will be relatable to all, everyone. So, one thing is that, when you make a career choice and you're looking at shifting from one city to the other, okay. For example, I started my firm Aletheiaa Legal in Gurgaon, but because of certain personal reasons, my husband and I both decided to shift from Gurgaon to Bangalore. Okay. And I had lived in Gurgaon for 29 years. So suddenly shifting from Gurgaon to Bangalore, where I knew no one, and I had been running the firm for 4 years, that was a very difficult period. However, the first 1 year, what helped me was, which I'll share more later, but was becoming part of a networking organization. Started going out for meetups, meeting more people. That was one important challenge that was there. But however, which anybody could face, when they're trying to make changes, they're trying to shift from one city to the other. You don't know people anywhere there. You're looking at clients, introducing your business all over again. So those were some of the challenges which I did face when I shifted. And yeah, and I'm so glad I did because it's really helped. But yes, though that 1 year period was, I think, quite challenging. Yes. Yeah.
Surbhi, what's your thought on this?
So I actually completely relate to what Surbhi said about mommyhood as well. And I became a mom very early on in my entrepreneurial journey. So for me, it was kind of everything all at once, and it was quite overwhelming. But I think she's covered a lot of what I personally went through as well. And I think that's one of the reasons my mindset around mothers who work changed a lot because I suddenly realized it's really not about giving up your career. You don't have a choice. You have a
True.
tiny thing that's completely dependent on you. But I think one of the things that I realized, which is a big shift when you're working, or rather when you're growing and scaling in your journey, is your ability to sell yourself. And I think that's something that was a very dramatic shift for me. When we were not even a business, and we had to start going and talking to people and telling them about what's our belief, why are we the best group or the best founders to back, whether it's investment or it was even retail stores who were asking about why should I list your product? I have 35,000 other SKUs I can sell. I think that was a very big learning that it's not just about being good at what you do, it's about being able to make the other person see how amazing you are at what you do. So personal branding, if you want to say it at a personal level, but also being able to sell yourself, your business, your vision. I think it takes a lot of growing up as you scale.
True. And, is it? It's like I've all again restating not being a mom, but for me, whenever I look at individuals like you who've done tremendous in your journey, it always makes me feel that it's like taking care of two babies, right? Like one at home and one actually,
Yeah,
because I believe that your individual brands are your babies as well, right? It's something which you guys have. It's for me, I feel it that way. It's like a seed, right, for all of you. I hope that's the same emotion all of you carry. But
absolutely. And
but
the pressure.
sorry.
And the pressures that come with it.
I'm sure, I'm sure. Now that we've touched motherhood, right? Like, Surbhi Bhatia, I have a very specific question for you. Considering the fact that you're the founder of a company that caters primarily to mothers, right? Can you discuss some of the, small or big initiatives the mom store has implemented to support working women or promote work-life balance? Or some unique needs of women which the brand tries to cater with not just the product and service but holistically as a brand.
Yeah. So, see, besides complying to all the policies like the Maternity Benefit Act and giving 26 weeks of paid maternity to anyone who's going through their pregnancy and motherhood journey, besides that, we've taken a lot of initiatives to ensure that women in our team stay happy and feel comfortable to remain within the workforce. So some of these are like, for new moms, we have to have a small crèche where they can bring their babies to work, and there is a nanny who can take care of them. There is a area where, it's a private room where they can pump if they really need to, and refrigerate their breast milk if they need to go home and feed the child. We also have some tie-ups with Montessori's and play school centers around our office, so that if somebody wants to put their child in daycare, they can come back. And all of these have been keeping in mind the needs of a young mom. The most challenging 4 to 5 years of motherhood that a mother, has to endure because of the amount of care that a child needs in their growing years. Other than that, because I'm a woman founder, and the leadership usually is the one who defines the culture, because of my own limited bandwidth and the fact that I have two babies of my own, and I'm having a third baby in the form of my startup. We work in a way that we start early, like we start around 9:30 in the morning, and our meetings are all scheduled early on. And by 6:30, the entire team leaves office. So whether they are females or males or whatever, and so we encourage people to have hobbies outside of office to take care of their fitness levels, their wellness. And in 4 years of the Monster journey, there's not been a single day we've had like a late night or midnight submission or a call or anything, which is actually very different from my initial career
Career
journey,
journey.
where it was very, very frequent.
Right, right. No, and it's very good to cultivate work-life balance, not just for women as a gender, but for everybody for that matter. Surabhi, Raddhika, if you guys could just maybe throw insights of in your individual companies, how are you catering to the need of female and encouraging them to grow with you guys in your individual businesses?
Okay, so I'll go with that. So, in the legal profession, there's generally a belief that you don't have a life. Okay, that's generally the belief that if you want to do corporate commercial law, if you want to enter into litigation, forget about your life for the first couple of years. Now, I had to go through that initially in my career, and that was one learning that I got to my firm. And it's a coincidence, but all my colleagues are women. It's not that I've chosen it that way, but it's happened like that. And what we do is that, and some of them have children. So what we do is every Monday, okay, we have calls on Monday and Thursday, and then we meet. Every Monday, they first have to tell me what they did on the weekend. It's mandatory, and they need to tell me what they did do, and none of them can say that they worked. So we have like a point system, okay, where if you say you worked, you get negative. And then everyone shares what they did. And I ensure that I have something to share. So I'll talk about treks I've been to, concerts I've been to, some instrument I'm playing, something different. So they understand what it means to have a work life balance. Otherwise, the burnout is very high in the legal industry because you're forever using your brains, you're forever working, there are deadlines. So this is something which I have implemented. And like what Surbhi said, we work from 9:30 in the morning till about 6:30. No calls, no work after that,
True. Yeah.
and 5 days a week. So I think I'll hand it over to Surbhi Talwar.
Yeah, so I think for us as well, what we try to do, of course, the legal stuff is done as well, but we are very sticklers for the kind of working time. So we also do try to ensure that it's a 10 to 6, that we have actually a 6-day work week, but we've now, thanks to some of the women on the team, have implemented 2 Saturdays off because they were like, listen, I can't do this every weekend. So there's also a lot of, back and forth feedback from the team. We're actually a majority women team. And most senior leadership is actually women. So we have a very good culture, which we kind of co-define, which has been a great strength for us as founders as well, because we're able to do whatever the company and what our team needs, to cater to them. We also have a paternity leave because I think a large part of the equity is the fact that you want the man there. The first 10-15 days are traumatic for new moms, no matter how much you try and put on a brave face. So we have a forced paternity leave for everyone that has a baby, and yeah, just try and make sure that whenever there is an unusual incident that needs to be looked after, we try and accept and work around them as much as possible, whether it's through leaves or it's through work from homes or whatever it is that we can do realistically in the kind of small setup that we are.
Awesome. So, now that we've touched upon these things, one of the next question which comes into my mind is this that, and I'm going to touch a little bit on each of individual, your journeys. But Surbhi, again, I'll start with you. Talwar. Oh, God. I really like this where I have to specify names. But if we're going to decide some, quick individual pet names. So,
Sorry, I think we lost Sakshi.
Yeah, we lost her.
Yeah, I think we lost her. I am here. So, to the audience, I'm Mansa. I'm a part of the marketing team along with Sakshi. Um, I'm just going to do this. Surbhi, I don't know where she was. Uh,
I figured.
so let me just go back to this. I think she wanted to um, ask you about how having men supportive men changes the game, right? What do you think men can become? How do you think men can become partners in improving gender equity in the workplace? Sakshi is back. I'm going to bring her up. Let me see if. Okay, she's not here yet. Do you understand the question?
I do. Don't very
All
clear.
of us do.
I think I'm probably I'm going to sound like a bit of a fangirl, but I think I mean, my journey as a mom or our journey as parents would not have been possible if my husband had not been who he is. So he's actually my co-founder. So the kind of pressure at work was equal to him and to me when we had the baby. But it's just throughout the entire first, I would say, a year almost, it was unsaid. Like I was looking after whatever I needed, whether it was my emotional state, whether it was my, kid and the feeding or the family or whatever. I had the permission and the ability to drop work literally on his head and leave, or be where I needed to be. And it takes a lot of commitment for someone who's also part of the family unit to say, okay, you and I'll do the rest. So I think that's a huge advantage. Of course, that's my husband I'm talking about, but I think in a work scenario, if you have teams that have working men and women, I think we equally play backup for each other, right? Because there are enough commitments that men have in their lives where they need supportive colleagues to take over from them. And I think for women, perhaps we need that even more. Maybe because in a lot of roles, and I guess legal is one profession like that, but equally across a lot of other companies, it's defined as typically male leadership roles. And as a woman, sometimes though you want a seat at the table, you don't always get it. So if you have a man who understands that there's this colleague who is great at her job or is new and needs some help, being able to just usher you into the doors, make sure you are at the meetings where you need to be, can be really, really helpful. I think overall, of course, if you've got a boss who is supportive of you having a life, and if you have a good professional relationship where you understand each other's needs, I think that's absolutely priceless. Because I have had women bosses who have been super, super hard on me, and men bosses who have been less hard. Who have understood, okay, you need to go home. I understand, of course, it's 8 o'clock, like get out of here. And women who've been like, no, I'm here and it's 9 and you will stay. So I think it could go either way. But I think having supportive colleagues, whether they are men or women, in whatever it is that your challenge is it can be life changing. Actually, it can change the course of careers.
One more thing that I'd like to add there, and you spoke about how the teams need to be supportive, and the manager needs to be supportive of the woman's choices and needs at that point. I've seen a lot of organizations do mentoring and coaching for women, especially when they reach mid-managerial and senior managerial role, to coach them on how to manage family and this as they step into leadership roles. But I think it's equally important to have the same kind of mentoring and coaching for the male managers and the male leaders as well, because a lot of times I felt that they're not sensitized towards the needs of the working women, because some of these male leaders belong to the previous generation, may not have seen so many women at workforce during their initial journeys, and so they're not able to connect and relate to it. And I always feel that, women have the problem and they keep on getting mentored and coached, but they do understand your own issues. It's the males who need the coaching, the leadership or the managers and everything, who actually need the coaching, who sensitize on, how women need flexibility, but not at the behest of output. And output and time spent in the office is not exactly correlated.
Awesome. So I am back,
Yeah.
but I was backstage and I heard everything. So please, don't worry. And thank still stayed online. And I really apologize for the entire operational issue. But getting back to our discussion, and because we're talking about women in leadership positions and role, I want to understand how can companies create a culture that will support women in a leadership position, and I think we've seen the change. We've seen where brands and companies are taking internal as well as external initiatives to kind of promote women in leadership position. But if you guys can throw in some thoughts, ideas, initiative, practices which you believe have worked in your individual organizations to support women in leadership position, that could be just a soft support, or maybe support where you're incentivizing, where you're maybe recognizing them in a very different manner, anything. But I would want to kind of understand that, and people who are watching us maybe could then implement that in their individual companies as well. Radhika, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Sakshi. So, one thing which we've implemented is that in the team we have a coach, okay, who so I have a coach, and I what I do is that we have sessions. I have sessions for my colleagues individually with that coach, okay, and I've done that in the past, and that's something I'm also looking at doing now, is that that coach will help them to understand not only the personal issues that they're going with, but even at work, if they're dealing with some issues where I've experienced with some of my colleagues that they don't know how to say no to a client, or if sometimes a client is trying to negotiate on a certain amount, they feel very uncomfortable, they don't know how to push back, they find it a little difficult. So the coach helps them, mentors them in that way, and it really helps them in overcoming those issues. And and at times, it's so interesting, Sakshi, that the reason they're the fact that they're not being able to say no is also got to do with certain issues they're dealing with. And when they address that, certain other personal issues get dealt with. That why is it that they can't say no? What is the reason? What are they afraid of? So their fears, they come up, and by undergoing that coaching or that mentoring, they're able to address that and overcome them. I've seen a major shift in some of my colleagues who've gone through those sessions. So I think investing in your colleagues by making them go for these sessions also make you feel very good, because it's not only helping them professionally but even at a personal level.
And to add to that, a lot of women tend to suffer from the imposter syndrome. They find it very difficult to sell themselves, to talk about themselves, and even to add to a point in a discussion. And this is like not just at the initial years or the beginner levels, but even in mid managerial levels. Sometimes because they are thought to be as soft, right? They are not. The male voices will probably drown them down, and they are just uncomfortable putting their true self across because of several reasons. So, bringing in professional help and professional coaches in addition to the organization, because the organization may not always have senior leaders who are women. So, bringing in professional coaches from the outside to help these women take up better roles on the mantle will also help.
Yep, I think the only thing I would add to that is try to have senior women at every role, right? And I think every organization has has women in it, and I think people are more conscious of it today. So maybe hiring is also
Right,
going.
right.
But I think every organization has its own struggles and challenges. There will be reasons why women don't make it into senior roles specific to your industry or your category sometimes, or just, your function even. And I think it helps to have conversations with women at younger positions so that you know what the struggles are and therefore can help them to actually come into senior leadership positions. I mean, it's scary, as someone who's running a company, to see the kind of, you do have to give a lot of monetary support to women as they go through different life stages. And sometimes, as because we manage, of course, our own P&Ls as well, it's a big commitment from a company, right? But when you look at it as a company as a whole, or you try and figure out, okay, in my function, in my firm, what can I do to make sure that women don't drop out when they usually do? I think that contributes greatly to culture, because you're actually sensitizing, like we've all been discussing, sensitizing everyone, because it's not a woman problem alone, and it's not a management problem. You want to have colleagues with you who are across genders as well, so it's an everyone problem.
True, true. No, and I'll just pitch in a question basis this discussion only. Though I usually take advices and your statements at the end, but I would want to know this because again, somebody who is as aspirational as me would want to be there. Looking at, I know there'll be people like me who are watching us as well, right? But there's always something which stops us to maybe climb the ladder. It could be anything. What would advice would you guys give to them? Somebody who's maybe starting a business and everything, and maybe would want to take a step level up, would want to maybe become a CEO, would know I can do that, or would want to pitch in into getting VCs. Somebody who's working in the company and now would want to maybe jump 2 levels up in their particular role. What advice would you give them? Consider in mind that there is something or other that's stopping them. How can I overcome it? Right? How can I overcome that thought? That maybe it's not the right time, or there's always a right time.
So, Sakshi, for me, there is one. I did that for myself. Okay, as when I was part of one of the leading law firms of India, and I had to decide, and I wanted to start my own practice. And I don't come from a family with lawyers, so I'm the first generation lawyer and now an entrepreneur. So that fear was there. How do I? Will I be able to? Will people look at me seriously?
Right,
Will they give me work? Okay,
right,
all those questions came up, and at that time, see, I'm someone who uh, I don't have an issue in going and doing programs, okay, self development programs, finding yourself, or going to a mentor, going to a coach. And that is what I did, because I wanted to understand for myself what is it that is stopping me. And the answer I got was the fear of failure. Okay.
right,
And at that time, through those courses that I participated in, I dealt how to deal with that fear. The fear is not going to go anywhere, it's going to be there throughout. But what I built my muscle on was how to deal with it and go past it.
right.
And once that happens, you can throw any challenge at a person, they'll be able to deal with it, if that is the fear that stops them. So my
Right.
advice will be, identify what is it that is stopping you.
Stop it.
That's one thing which worked for me. So yeah, I would
True.
say that.
No, and I really like how you gave a personal example. That is what connects, people to your opinions. You guys, anything top of the mind.
I can add what. Sorry, Surbhi, do you want to
No,
go
no,
first?
no. Okay.
Okay. So I actually had. I mean, it was a very big learning for me, because I worked in corporate for about 14 years before I left to do Happy Jazz, and I used to always look at KRAs and think, oh my god, it's a pain. I don't want to do this. It's like a form I need to fill to like prove to someone that I deserve a hike. Like, what is that? It is the most critical thing you can do for yourself in the year. And as I grew in my professional career, I realized I actually not do it. I don't do it at the end of the year. I do it every single month. Every time there's an achievement that I had, I would jot it down, because that is you actually creating milestones that you've achieved for yourself, right?
True. Right.
It is not something you need to prove to your boss to ask for a raise. Yes, you need to do that as well, but it is for you to know, look, I'm actually contributing here. And at the end of the year, if you sit down to do your KRAs and your KPIs, you'll forget everything that happened in the first 8 months of the year, and you'll only be able to think back to last quarter. And it's very detrimental actually to your own growth. So when they say men are better at negotiating than women, I think it's because they are not afraid to toot their own horn. And we need help to toot our own horn, right? So this was
Yeah.
helpful for me to be like, here's my list of things I did. Here's what you asked me to do. Here's where I overachieved. Now I want this salary. And it's very factual as a discussion, because they can turn around and say, but I don't think. And if you have data with you, it's not about thoughts anymore. It's about, I did this and therefore I think I
True.
deserve this. Then it's about opinions. And I think that came back to my first thought about the learning to advocate for yourself in whatever that situation is I think it's the most important skill you can learn as anyone growing in an organization.
Subi, you had something to add.
I was just saying that, as an entrepreneur, like entrepreneurship is the hardest job I have done in my life. Because every day is like challenges. It's like, which fire should I douse first? So, and when I started off, I, I mean, I was just starting for the joy of it and I wanted to build something and all. But I could have never imagined that I would be able to resolve so many challenges that would come our way. And obviously, it just seems very hunky dory. Oh, you're a woman entrepreneur, you built a business. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of breakdowns. There are a lot of moments where you question yourself. Okay, why did I
True.
even do
Yes.
this? I had a job. I had a salary. I didn't have to take care of anything else. But at the same time, I think what has helped is like journaling. So every time, when I feel low and I feel like, okay, this challenge seems unsurmountable, I go back to my diary and I start journaling and I try to figure out the solution. And then, what happens is when you just detach yourself from it, the problem sort of becomes smaller and you start looking at it more pragmatically and you're able to solve it better. So now when I go back and read my journal, sometimes it's like, oh, okay, this is what I wished for, and this is possibly this is how this is such a small problem, and it was seeming so big at that time. So the fact is that what I'm trying to say is that self motivation is very very important. Just like we talk about
Important.
self care, where you should care for your health and your fitness and everything, self motivation in terms of your self care for your mind and for your mental wellness is as important. Where you should not beat down yourself for every failure, because in entrepreneurship, the failures are not your own. No, the failure can be extraneous. It could be due to an external circumstances which you never thought would happen. For example, the pandemic, right? And I would just like to say to women entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur out there that there'll be challenges every day, but you just need to be strong enough mentally as well to be able to deal with it on a daily basis. And never think that life is going to be a bed of roses. It's always going to be a bed of thorns, and you have to grow your own roses among them.
True. No, I mean, I agree with all of you. There is, and the best part is all of you shared your individual struggles to kind of, how do we say, concrete your argument about, what we should do when we're kind of stuck at that phase where you want to achieve bigger things, but there's always something, internal fear, external fear, the fear of, will people take me seriously, the fear of not putting, stars as a badge, or, the fear of, can I even do this? So I'm totally with it. And now that we're talking about fear, again, one of the questions is very similar to it. Like, how do you, what do you feel organizations can do when they want to address, biases that impact equity? Because we're talking about equity, right? Which is the core, at least this year, when it comes to women, empowerment. So, what steps do you think organizations can take to address implicit biases that impact equity, and to ensure that each one of us and each woman in the space has an equal opportunity in career advancement in compared to my counterpart?
Yeah, I think it's important not just to do lip service to the equity policies that a company comes up with. So, right. So there's an HR policy which will always be mailed out to all the employees
Right.
saying that this is what we who we are and this is what we do
Right.
and these are the 100 points that we follow. But when people actually see all of those in implementation, when they see senior leaders respecting those policies, when they see people in the organization implementing them, that's when the trust of a woman any employee in the organization goes up, and they start feeling more comfortable in their organizational professional equation. So I think it's very important to walk the talk as well.
I'm waiting for all of you to
Radhika
pick up
can go.
the
I
question.
thought the screen froze. Okay,
Yeah,
see,
thanks to
yeah,
internet.
for equity, see, I look at embracing equity as gender neutral. Okay, and
Right,
for me, that's something I'm very passionate about. Is like what Surbhi said about adopting policies. Now, one is it came in the paper today as well that and the chief justice said that you have that not to have these biases saying, oh, women are not good at tech, oh, women are not good at finance, oh, women are not good at this. That is one. So,
right,
or men are not good at this. Letting go of those biases that are already there in the mind or
right.
preconceived notions. Second is when you're looking at equity, one thing which I really propagate and I wish to address and tell people is when you're looking at policies, try and have gender neutral policies. Reason being, when you treat all genders equal, equity will come in. Okay. For example, people have policies only for sexual harassment policies only for women. The moment you make it gender neutral for all employees, they will feel part and they will start behaving as equals,
Right.
right? So those are things when you're looking at embracing equity, treat everybody as equal, irrespective of the gender. And that's where that line gets drawn. That's my personal belief. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with what Radhika said as well. I think it just makes a big difference if, as a company, and a company is obviously made up of both men and women at senior positions, both in HR and outside HR functions. So it's very difficult to judge saying,
Right.
one HR individual should be unbiased because everyone has their own personal biases. But I think if, as a company, at least from a rule book standpoint, you do treat both genders as equal, I think it makes a huge difference. For example, at Happy Jars, when we were first hiring for the factory, we got told, oh, machine operators are all men. And I was like, I'm not looking at a machine operator. I want someone who can understand and look after hygiene and food because we have kids and mums and families, and food is a very, very tricky business. So all our machine operators are women. And I mean, personally, if you ask me, I have a pro woman bias, right? So I love hiring women. I think we are phenomenal. And I think as much as I can personally do to grow women, I will through the course of my life. But I think if you are able to actively counter the biases that exist outside, people notice that in a company, people will notice that in the culture.
True.
So I think in
Right.
India, and this is not a gender problem, I think in India, when we are offering salaries, and I used to be a great advocate for equalized pay, right? If I am doing the same job as a male counterpart, my salary should be the same. And every single job I have held, I have been disappointed because at some point the salaries come out and I'm like, what? Like it just makes no sense, right? But I realize that in India, it's because we ask for pay slips. And if men start earlier or start higher or grow faster or whatever it is that the system does right now, women will always have a slight backseat as far as pay is concerned. And I don't think, I mean, that's a structural thing that we're going to have to work around over years, right? But I think before that happens, the fact that you don't feel like you are underrated just because you are of a certain gender, I think that emotional equality is important and achievable far faster, possibly.
True. Coming to the same question, but a little different, maybe a situation. All of you have workforces under you, workforces that look up to you. How do you navigate, very difficult conversation when it comes to, gender or diversity in your individual workplaces? Women do have these issues, right? And sometimes want maybe a particular department person sitting in front of you to discuss, maybe you want something a little more, right? Somebody who kind of understands and helps me navigate to these questions. How do you, manage that in your organizations?
Mostly, in our organization, we do it by one on one. So, if a particular woman employee is facing a certain issue, we have a one on one with her and try to resolve it and help her find a solution to it within, whatever we can offer as an organization. For example, I since we are a young team, we have a lot of women in their early and late 20s, and increasingly we found that women tend to take off during their menstrual cycles and they need period leaves and all of that, which was not a policy in the mom store as such. Because and while some companies are offering, my personal opinion is that if health and wellness can be taken care of, it is something that can be managed along with it. But having a conversation and understanding their issues and all of that, we've also rolled out a period friendly policy for the women because they were finding it difficult to travel and work on the first day of the menstrual cycles and so on. So it always helps to have a conversation rather than sticking to like policies on paper, whether how a leave can be taken and what is the flexibility allowed in everything. If you can have conversations and get to know the point of view of the employees or of the team, then it really helps to gain that trust among the employer and the employee.
Yeah. So, so in our team, while most of us are women, but external counsels or people we collaborate with are mostly men. So there are times when the team members will be interacting with them, and the colleagues, the councils may speak in a certain way, which appears to the my colleagues as, oh, they were rude or they were harsh or they spoke to me in a certain way. So
Right.
then what happens is I hear them out first. I will hear them out saying, okay, what happened? Like, so we said one on one, and then just asking them questions, making them understand, okay, so what was the situation, what happened, what did they say to you, things like that, to just make them understand that it's not about a man or a woman, but it's a colleague to another colleague. So if we keep that on the side, how would you address it, and what would you want from me, what do you want from me, and then whatever they tell me, then I speak to the other colleague as well, that what happened, could you give me a background. So I will ask both what happened, and then understand, okay, so maybe, okay, so this is what happened, and then address and speak to both of them separately, and then ask them to kind of resolve it amongst themselves. And that has worked, because first hearing them out, giving them a ear, understanding the issue, and then looking at what needs to be done. So yeah, that's something which I implement.
Sure.
Yeah, I think one on one for us as well, except in our company, luckily or whatever, we have so many women that the fights are the other way. So we have the guys coming and saying, this one said this like very rudely to me. So I have to go and tell the women, listen, guys, I know I know we have privileges, but you can't speak like this to the guys. So yeah, but I think absolutely like these kind of conversations you can't have in groups. You do need to
Yeah.
address them
Right.
one on one.
Right.
Then you need to find the person who you can speak to, right? And when I was in
Right.
corporate India, I remember it was not always my direct boss, and many times it was not
Right.
HR at all. It was just sometimes it was just directly the colleague. Yeah, and I remember from my early days, once there was a colleague, and we would both be at each other's throat in every conversation, and we had no idea why. I had no idea why. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a nice person. Why do you hate me so much? And then I just sat him down and I said, look, let's talk about it because I see this happening. And he didn't see it that way at all. Right. So one very big learning for me was if you just sit in front of each other and you put aside the differences and you talk about it and you say, this is what you said and this is how it made me feel. Is that what you intended? A lot of times it's just like, no, man, I'm just like this. I talk rubbish. And just helps to smooth things over a lot. So if there isn't a professional system to, work through it, then I think having a conversation, because it's like you have fights on the playground and you can't always go call your mom.
Yeah.
So sometimes
Right.
you just need to
Right.
like and yell at
Right.
each other and
That's
get
a good analogy.
Right. And you should, like you said, right? Though we have that I won't say upper hand, but that soft corner. But it's not always about having somebody to fall back to, right?
Yeah.
Even we as women, if we want to become leadership or we want to achieve bigger things, I think we should learn to navigate problems on our own as well, right? And have that understanding of how do I do it. Like Radhika mentioned, right? Keep the gender biasness away when you're looking at a particular situation
Yeah.
at work, right? That is what will help you. So I totally agree
Well,
with
there
it.
was
And
this very
the,
interesting article which came in the newspaper a couple of days back on how women leaders tend to become moms at workplace and being the
yeah.
adult in the room. And
Absolutely.
I related to it so much because so many times I've told my team that I'm not your mother, I'm just your boss. Because they just look at you like a motherly figure and think that you can solve any problem possible, and you have to always be the
Right,
adult in the room, the mature person and everything.
right, right.
So yeah,
And always have a solution for everything. And I
Yeah.
think, sometimes that expectation internally and externally also I feel is a little incorrect, right? Like we are also learning, no matter we are founders and entrepreneurs or mothers, and we would want to learn,
we
right,
are
at every
human
stage.
beings, first of all. Yeah.
Totally. So I have three questions to end it with. So I would merge two because we're running out of time. And quickly, the first question goes to all of you, and then I will go a little specific to each one of you. So the generic question is very simple, right? Um, do you guys believe that maybe joining communities or being part of a particular group online and offline is something which you would encourage women to do, keeping all the discussions we've had in mind? And what is your personal thought when it comes to embracing equity, what it stands for you individually?
Okay, so as far as joining communities are concerned, Sakshi, I will tell everybody to join. It's really helpful. I'm part of so many communities. For women specifically, there are communities called Her Entrepreneurial Network. You have many, Leap and
True.
Her Entrepreneurial Network, and many other. And I'm part of a networking organization as well for the last 9 years. And in addition to that, I'll talk about that in the next question that you will ask. But mainly, when you're part of a community, you get the advantage of interacting with women who are in different ages, different stages, and from different organizations and sectors. And when you listen and interact with them, you get to learn so many things. Like today itself, when
True.
Surbhi was talking about, looking at certain aspects, KRAs, KPAs, the other Surbhi was talking about journaling. I wrote those down. Just
Right.
imagine, and four of us learn from the two of them. And this is not even a community. So imagine what you can learn from being part of a community.
Imagine this discussion informally over a coffee table, right? So much more.
Definitely.
Right.
Now we are a community.
Surbi is in the panel. Any thoughts on this?
No, having a community is a must. Especially whether as a woman entrepreneur, as a professional, because you realize that the challenges that you're facing on a daily basis are not your own. They are like general. Everybody is facing them, and it just becomes a sounding board, and it makes you feel a lot better when you understand others' perspectives. You learn from their journeys as well. And I'm part of I am Women Network and entrepreneurial networks. And every time you post any issue that you have, you always have somebody trying to help you out and provide a listening ear, or giving say using your network to connect you with somebody who you want to connect with. So I think it's absolutely essential to build your network, and it becomes your safe space where you can share anything, right?
Right.
Because a you know a community which has both male and women uh, behave very differently from only women communities. Women are more open to asking their troubles. They don't no longer feel like it's a stupid question or how they will be perceived or anything, and they are able to vent out their hearts and talk about even not just professional but personal problems as well, which are impacting their professional lives. So yeah, everybody should become part of some community relevant
True.
to their fields
Yeah.
or to. Mhm.
I think I just want to add that it's important to have a community that you are a part of, but sometimes you have to make your own. And I think that's one of the things that we don't always network enough, right? We don't ask each other enough questions. And over the last, in fact, since the pandemic, there's been a group of maybe 4 or 5 women co founders who I am personally now friends with, who I can pick up the phone and talk to on any random evening and just cry and moan and be like, I don't like my life today. Can you help me? And I think that makes a huge difference because, like Surbhi said as well, if it's a women's only group or it's a woman to a woman, you feel less judged. Maybe
Right.
also, I think we just assume that this person knows the space I'm coming from, and I don't have to pretend that today is fantastic and I'm at the top of my game. I can literally melt and cry.
Right.
I think that's a really good. It's a very safe space to talk non-judgmentally. So even if you don't find it, because I'm a part of a lot of professional communities as well, and obviously a lot of them are founder communities, so there's still a lot of one-upmanship that happens. So not a lot of it is very, I guess not every group is very open. It's great for professional learning and for help when you need it. But I just feel like having these relationships with people who are in business and who know you, so not your mom and your sister, but like friends or co-founders or just other
Right.
women professionals, I think makes a huge difference, and it's absolutely a must.
Um,
Right.
Sakshi, may I add one thing? Do we
Please,
have?
please, you
Okay.
don't need
So,
to ask me.
see, the three of us spoke about professional communities as well, because that's very important for people who may be listening in who are not entrepreneurs, or but they
Right.
work with corporates.
Right.
One thing which I would want to tell is that it's very important for them to join a community, even for them. You have organizations like Young Indians, you have organizations like I think many others, where you can do social impact programs. You can
Right.
impact the society, you can be part of it. And when you do something which impacts the society as part of a community, the sense of belongingness is extremely high.
Right.
And those are communities they should look out for, or maybe just being part of a frisbee or an ultimate frisbee community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your hobbies, looking out for those kind of communities which help you facilitate the passion that you have for a certain thing. Look at those as well.
Right. So I don't want to end this, but of course I have to end it, and maybe we can pick it up, like I mentioned, over a coffee table, and everybody who's watching us maybe can join us as well. But ending the session with one common question, because all of you are, again, like I mentioned at the start, have built businesses, brands which we use, we avail services. We've seen you guys. I have personally been connected to a few of you, and I know how you guys have grown. What advice would you give to women who maybe just starting out their own career, or maybe are entrepreneurs, or maybe somebody who's just sitting there with her diary watching this and would be like, I had that idea, but I never took that step to be that. What is your career advice to these individual women? And second question, I just really wanted to ask, especially to both Surbis, and if Radhika, if you have any thought. Two questions. The second one is, we always hear male versus female entrepreneur, right? And that is like, that's always been there. What is your thoughts on it? And specifically when it comes to getting funding and growing your business, how do you see that differentiation? I've always heard it, be it online and offline, from people. So two questions to end this discussion. One, your career advice, and second, this whole male versus female entrepreneur, what's your thought?
Okay, so I'll go with the first question. See, for me, for people who are starting off,
Right.
something which I learned after 8 years of running my own firm is, please get a mentor. It's very important. You need to have a mentor. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Second, very important aspect which I want to tell all women is that there is a program that is run by I am Bangalore NSR Cell. Okay. NSR Cell of it offers free programs for women entrepreneurs, and with Goldman Sachs. Okay, they are free courses where you get trained for 3 months and you learn how to run a business. Financial, marketing, legal, all aspects are covered. And then they give you mentors. And in the last 1 year, I've gone through that program, and the mentors and the way it's impacted the business is phenomenal. So that's one thing which I will share for sure. Please get a mentor and continue to learn. Learning cannot end. That's two things. Yeah.
I think my advice to anyone who's starting off their career or entrepreneurship journey would be that don't be afraid to seek help. Early on in my career, I used to feel very judged, that I would be judged, that I would not open up to my manager and speak my mind out with the fear that they will think that I'm not good enough or smart enough or whatever. But I think in hindsight, I should have asked all those questions. It would have helped the project I was on. I should have asked questions which I wanted to, or flexibilities that I needed at that time. I should have voiced it out. So
True.
don't be afraid of voicing out your opinions at all. And setbacks happen to everyone, and so don't be scared of setbacks. There's always a way around problems, and you can always start afresh from any issue that you face. And in terms of what equality and equity means to me, is basically I believe in equilibrium, right? I feel that men and women can try to be equal, but with our biologies and physiologies and
Right.
psychologies, we cannot be entirely equal. But we can always strike an equilibrium between this yin and yang. So, and this equilibrium, whether it's between a manager and their reportees, or between a husband and a wife, can be defined from situation to situation. It depends on what works for both of you. So it does not always help to shout for equality and say that this has to be equal or everything. You need to strike that balance, and that balance is extremely important for the well-being of say anyone in a professional or a personal
Personal.
organization.
True. I mean, very well put.
I think I'll start with the second question because I actually posted about that when I was posting about this talk. So, as
Right.
far as funding
Right.
businesses concerned, I think it's so many things together. Whether we advocate for ourselves and our businesses as a gender as well as the other gender, I don't know. It's a question. Whether we are believed to be as strong as leaders as the other gender or not by people across the table. And sometimes people across the table are our own gender, but seem to trust the other gender
Right.
more. Think about yourself. Sometimes you also trust the other gender more. Happens, right? It's personal bias at the end of the day. It's not rational. But I feel like the data says it, right? Women funded businesses get 1% of
Right.
funding across a year like last year. Male
Right.
funded businesses, everything else, and 9% of the funding goes to men and women funded
Wow.
businesses together. So
Right.
10 versus 90, right? The numbers are right there. Whether it is the sizes of rounds that are raised, men raise more. The numbers of rounds that are raised, men raise more. But let's not forget the number of businesses that exist more with male founders, right? So the numbers are kind of stacked against women right now. Again, I don't think it's about being stacked against. I think a lot of it is how aggressively you fight. And I think somewhere there, I
Right.
perhaps am on the opposite side of what Surbhi said earlier, because I've realized over the last 5 years, every day is a fight. Right. I used to think I was aggressive and career oriented and ambitious when I was in a job, but my God, you should see me now. I'm like a bulldog because it's like it doesn't matter who is on the other end of the table. I will make you see what I want you to see. And you can call it
Right.
aggression, you can call
Yeah,
it whatever, right? I don't really,
I get
I'm
that.
not.
Totally
Yes.
get it.
But I think like the last
Shut
5 years,
up the
I feel
bullshit
like
and let me talk.
yeah, like the opposite of equilibrium in my life, on every
Right.
front. And a lot of times I also realize that when you're looking at funding a business, it is eventually at the end of the day about their money. And money is the most important thing, right? Even for
Right.
us as people. So they are going to put it in the hands of the person they think can make the most aggressive choices with that money. And let's be honest, sometimes I'm not the most aggressive person in the room. So I get why it happens, but I think it happens a lot. And it's a
Right.
fight that we have to fight more aggressively to get that little bit extra of an inch around, a funding table. And I think coming to the other point, as far as what equity is or what equitable lives are about, I think sometimes it's not about equality, but it's about feeling like you have the
Right.
opportunity, right? I think if you feel that you can do it, regardless of whether you are man or woman, in your head, it's equal. And then it's about fighting the rest of the world, right? So, my advice to anyone who's thinking about starting or having that negotiation, because it's also March 31st and it's appraisal time, don't undersell yourself and don't wait for the perfect time, right? Because there's no perfect time. And I can tell you that as someone who quit her job the month after she discovered she was pregnant and left all that salary and money on the table and said, you know
Me
what, I'm
too.
right. It's so hard. Like, I'm going to do this entrepreneurship and new mommy thing because I'm a superstar. No, I'm not. I failed miserably at most of it. But there's no perfect time because there will always be something that comes in the way. And like Surbhi said earlier, the thing you least expected was the pandemic.
Right,
Life could have been amazing and perfect, and then everyone's just locked at home and there's no money.
right,
So go for it. Whatever it is you want to do, make sure you are comfortable, that you've asked all the right questions, that you have your finances in order.
right.
Because I think that's one of our biggest fears is we have to eventually depend on someone else, whether it's our parents or a husband in the future. You don't. You have complete control over your money. And anyone who's listening and wants help, I am open to have any kind of conversation around personal finance. I'm not a finance person, but I am very passionate about it. So openly willing to help anyone.
Awesome. I think I just want to end with, other than my thank yous, I feel each one of you have done great. You've come through challenges, but for us, each one of you are superstars. So that is how it is. I won't say superwoman because again, this is what we've been talking about. But yes, I think each one of you are superstars, and you guys have done tremendous, great work at each of your individual spaces and at this particular panel as well. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate. It's a topic a lot of people, I won't say fear, but avoid or dodge as much as possible. But I'm very glad each one of you took time out, shared your personal insight as well, and I hope everybody who's watching us got some or the other way motivated in this particular space. So thank you so much once again for your time, and I will end on this note. Thank you everybody who's watching. Please tuned with PayU. We come up with more such insightful, fun conversations, both online and offline. So hope to see you all very soon. Thank you so much once again. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Bye.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.